Hello, pond people. Frogopolis here. Like many of you, I've seen a lot of movies, from blockbusters to cult classics to random shit you've never heard of. While they all vary in quality, I've seen some great stuff. Heck, one of the reasons I started this channel is to talk about the stuff I think is great, especially the lesser known things, but they can't all be winners. I've seen a lot of crap, and I've put the most interesting crap in a handy dandy iceberg. Today, we'll be looking at Layer 1, which I like to call I'm Not Mad, I'm Just Disappointed, which I heard a lot from my parents growing up. And the further we go down, we'll see this poor frog get sadder and sadder. And the movie titles getting stranger and harder to recognize, but I can assure you these are real films that I have watched, until we get to my mystery layer. Ooh. Without further ado, let's get started on my bad movie iceberg. The first movie on there is Gags the Clown, which is actually pretty good in places, but unfortunately just has terrible structure. This movie shows us how the mysterious Gags the Clown has been terrorizing a small town by standing there, menacingly, but we soon learn that his presence is far more sinister than it appears. We primarily follow a few little groups in this movie. There's a couple of cops, there's a news team, a conservative talk show host, and teenagers. And that's really where my big issue comes with the movie. We're following all these people, but only the news team is really worth looking at. The talk show host and his co-host are also pretty good, but the shtick grows old until the very end when it picks up. There's some neat scenes, there's even stuff that's pretty funny, but it's so few and far between that it doesn't really make up for it. It all comes together pretty well at the end though, so I'll give it that. While I wouldn't say Gags the Clown is a bad movie per se, I think it's a great example of what makes a movie disappointing, where you like the premise and you can see the potential, but it's just not quite there. I've unfortunately seen quite a few movies like this, but out of most of the stuff on here, if you see it, check it out. Maybe you'll see something I didn't. This next movie though, I can't recommend and is the definition of disappointment. Saw 7 or Saw 3D was the, at the time, wet fart of a conclusion to the Saw franchise. I'm not going to pretend that these movies are high art or anything, but I have become kind of invested in the story up to this point, and I did like Saw 6. It set up what could have been a pretty good conclusion to a pretty wild series of movies. Instead, we got a boring slog of a movie that went through production hell and had a director that didn't even want to be there. Even the primary attraction in the movie, which is the game the protagonists go through, wasn't very good. If anything, I felt more annoyed by the end of it. There were some elements of the movie I did like. I always like seeing John Kramer in flashbacks. Tobin Bell's a very underrated actor. Seeing Dr. Gordon was kinda neat, and I genuinely like Hoffman. I think he's a great antagonist. And that's where any positives end. We also have John Kramer's wife who's just... she's there. And a bunch of other stuff leading up to the end that I didn't much care about. And speaking of the ending, it was fine. It's what you'd imagine would have happened, and I guess it capped things off. Thankfully, 13 years later, we got Saw X, which was actually pretty darn good. We also got Jigsaw and Spiral between that were not very good. Up next we have Don't Feed the Children, directed by Destry Allen Spielberg, one of Spielberg's daughters. I didn't know Spielberg had 7 kids. That's a lot of kids. Please Don't Feed the Children is a movie set in a post-apocalypse where there's a virus that turns people into cannibals. And it only seemed to affect adults, so a bunch of them died, but because like 1% of children can also be infected, they decided to blame the outbreak on them, and then round them all up and hunt them down. They don't really do anything with this premise, and they just kind of end up getting stuck in some crazy woman's house for most of the movie. This crazy woman being played by Michelle Dockery, who's the best part of the movie. Other than that, we have a group of kids with very stilted dialogue and very little personality. They're very poorly written. I barely even knew them even by the end. And it's no real fault of the actors, they were fine, it's just the writing sucked. We're initially introduced to one girl who seems to be trying to survive on her own until she bumps into and joins another group of kids. Then when they go to a small grocery store to steal supplies, they get caught and then it turns into a shooting and they're gonna have to make a run for it. I know it seems like I'm not explaining important parts like who these group of kids are and what their situation is or the situation around them because they don't do a very good job at explaining it either. The story just kind of pushes you along until they get to the house. So you have this movie where most of the cast is terribly uninteresting and you have this one standout performance. And it doesn't help that the writing doesn't really get much better from here, and there's zero tension. I don't usually try to be the person who does the why didn't they do this, but this movie's full of it. I never felt like any of the kids were in danger because it looks pretty easy to escape. They set up a few factors to make it seem like they can't leave, but for the most part, no, they can leave. Just put your mind to it, guys, you can do it. Oh yeah, Giancarlo Esposito's in this movie, and he shows up a few times just to ask Clara if she's hiding anybody because some kids recently killed someone and they're hiding somewhere. There's this whole scene about halfway through the movie where one of them actually finds out that they can get out of the room they're in through the walls, but I guess the hole they made isn't big enough for all of them. I don't know, it looks like they can fit if they try. And for whatever reason, they all just don't leave. Like, yeah, I guess they could say they're too big, but just make the hole bigger. Also, as they've made this discovery, the girl she's been raising as her daughter, yeah, that's the thing, it's not as interesting as it sounds, is outside of her in a greenhouse, and she can whack her with that shovel whenever she wants, but I guess she can't bring herself to. Vicky eventually volunteers to go through and scout the area to see if she can find anything useful before having to hurry back because Claire is on her way back to the house. This leads to a scene where she goes through the hole again at night so she can find a way to help them all escape. You found the way to help them all escape. It's the hole. Instead, their plan is for her to go out and burn down Carla's greenhouse, and this will cause a diversion. Then I guess she'll open the attic door from the other side and they'll all escape. Carla is sleeping through her whole little Mission Impossible mission here, and she gets all the way to the greenhouse with matches, but then Carla just shows up right behind her because her spidey senses went off and she gets caught. For kids surviving in a post-apocalypse, they have no survival instincts or skills, which just makes the movie kind of annoying to watch. And you know who else doesn't have very good survival instincts? The protagonist of the next movie, the boy. The Boy is a movie about a woman who is hired to take care of a couple's kid, but finds out that the couple's kid is actually just a doll. Truth be told, while there's a lot of eye-rollingly stupid moments in this movie, I enjoy watching it. On the second viewing for this video, I was like, you know, this isn't as bad as when I first saw it. It probably shouldn't be on this list, but you know what? I'm going to talk about it and then use it as a segue into the sequel, which is actual crap. Greta is a likable character, and it was fun watching her toy around with the doll. I like it when the protagonist in the movie takes a more curiosity approach to the paranormal thing. The whole setup and her just kind of learning to live with this apparently paranormal doll that moves around when no one's looking is fun. But as much as I like Greta, I have to go back to that lack of survival skills. There's this scene where she's going to go out and have a good time. And you know, she's showering, she's getting ready, and when she leaves the shower, she notices that her clothes are gone. And while she's going around trying to find out where they went, she notices that the attic is mysteriously open. So she gets a fire poker and goes into the attic only wearing a towel, where then the attic door door shuts on her. She's locked inside. There's a guy outside, but she can't see or hear him. And then she gets spooked by something, trips over, and knocks herself out. When I first saw that scene, I was so mad. Out of everything, I think it was a little too stupid. Of course, I have to talk about the end of this movie, which is pretty good, where we find out that the doll isn't possessed and moving on its own. There's just a guy living in the walls. This climax is so much fun when he just breaks the mirror and glass goes everywhere. Then he crawls out and he's wearing a cool-ass mask and just starts going on a rampage. Greta is able to briefly subdue him by simply sternly telling him that it's bedtime. It's wonderfully silly. So I would like to apologize to the boy. It is a perfectly fine movie and a good time. But you know what isn't? The Boy 2, or Brahms the Boy 2. The Boy 2 is every cliche about dolls and kids in one movie. A couple and their kids suffer a traumatic experience, so they move elsewhere. The kid finds the doll by pure coincidence. He starts only talking to the doll. He draws pictures of the doll and they're all spooky. And you won't believe this, but stuff starts happening around the house that's hard to explain. So remember in the first movie how it turns out that there was this guy in the walls doing everything and the doll wasn't supernatural at all? Well, forget that, because our doll Brahms is actually supernatural. Does he do anything interesting with those powers? No. It is explained that he has this odd effect on people where he'll choose one person and they'll go crazy and then kill people. Except nothing really happens and everyone's fine at the end. They're able to break the hold Brahms has on their kid and they toss it in the fire. Okay, well, something does kinda happen. Ralph Inson's character dies, who was a twist villain and the best actor in the entire movie. I feel so bad. He was trying so hard. Please watch The Witch. He's a great actor. Also, for some reason, the doll now has a head inside of the porcelain, so when they crack him over the head, there's this demon face staring at them, and it looks very silly. And if anybody remembers the trailers that made it seem like the doll was actually doing stuff, no, those were dream sequences from the mom. There is nothing good or scary about this movie. They don't do anything interesting with the established lore from the first one, and you're just better off watching the first one. I would actually put this movie lower on the Iceberg, but I would just want to keep it next to the first one for simplicity's sake, but I am going to put this little poop emoji on it. That may not seem very mature, but that's how I feel about it. So next we have the Poughkeepsie tapes, which is either loved or hated depending on who you talk to. My introduction to this movie was back in about 2007, where I would just see the clip where that woman is tied up with tape, and then the guy comes in on all fours like he's auditioning for the Lion King play. And of course the person who posted it would be like, "This is a real murder." At the time, I just saw it as a spooky little clip and didn't think much of it. It wasn't until much later that I knew it was even part of a movie. After seeing the movie in full, I have mixed feelings about it because the production and even some of the acting is really good. You have this great setup where they have all of these VHS tapes and you don't know what horrors are going to be on them. And then the feeling of disappointment when you find out that it's all in service of a pretty terrible antagonist and plot. There's this really tense scene where he's kidnapped somebody and you're absolutely terrified for her, only for all of that terror to go away when the killer comes out dressed like the fucking Phantom of the Opera. He's a massive dweeb, and that would be fine because these guys are usually unspectacular losers. But it just kills any tension you had, and in retrospect makes the entire movie pretty silly. He's supposed to be this genius, elusive killer, but you know, maybe the cops are this bad at their jobs. So you just end up getting this movie that's so concerned about being shocking and provocative that it forgets to have a quality story around it. And it's a real shame too, because Stacey Chbosky, who plays Cheryl Dempsey, is very good in this movie. She makes it as memorable as it is. Sure, I'll probably remember some of the creepy parts, but really what's going to stick in my mind from here to eternity is seeing her in this near catatonic and broken state before she reveals that she's missing one of her hands. Another movie that will stick with me from here to eternity, but for all the wrong reasons, is Megalopolis. Francis Ford Coppola's $120 million passion project. That was an absolute disaster both on and off the screen. I have made a review on this movie already, but if there's one thing this movie has going for it, it's that it's certainly fun to talk about. The story is this strange, unfocused mess, and the acting choices are questionable to say the least. There's scenes in Megalopolis that seem tacked on and unfinished. And the tone is so wildly all over the place that I wasn't sure if this was supposed to be satire or not. This movie is fun to watch with friends though, because you can try to piece together what the story is about and what Coppola is trying to say through it. Though what I gathered from the film wasn't exactly groundbreaking. While the story seems to be trying to be deep and introspective and have a point, it all comes off as very surface level, like stuff you'd see in a Facebook quote. It's not all terrible. There are a few scenes that in a bubble are pretty good, like this scene of the moving statues, or Caesar's crazy drunken journey. This moment between Caesar and Julia looks pretty nice. But that's the thing, these are just moments in a movie that is for the most part complete nonsense. But hey, at least we got Well Platinum out of it. Coincidentally, the last two movies in this layer also try to be deep and fail. Let's talk about Rumors. Rumors is a political satire where the world ends during the G7 summit, leaving all 7 leaders to fend for themselves and figure out what's going on. They seemingly tried their hardest to make this concept as boring as possible. They were going for this dry sense of humor that just didn't really work. And despite a pretty solid cast, there's nothing really here. The characters and dialogue this aren't very good, and you're just kind of watching these guys walk around the woods for over an hour. Even when a giant brain showed up and it was hinting at an alien invasion, it still somehow failed to be interesting. Despite its somewhat unique premise, it doesn't have much to say at the end of it all. It's supposed to be this biting satire, but it has no teeth. It had a few interesting moments and jokes that landed in its runtime, but it is overall a real slog to get through. The last movie in this layer is Joker, Filet Adieu. I failed French in school. This is another movie I've already talked about, but I can't do a layer about disappointing films without talking about this. The first Joker was pretty good despite its obvious influences. I had a good time with it. Joaquin Phoenix is very good in it. There's some good scenes. And it tells an overall solid story. Joker Filet Adieu, on the other hand, is Todd Phillips trying to be subversive and deep for over 2 hours. Were we the Jokers all along? They gave Todd Phillips $200 million to make a movie, and nobody told him no anywhere along the way, or they tried to and he simply didn't listen. This movie is a bloated mess, not even Joaquin Phoenix can save it. Him and Lady Gaga are supposed to be in love, but they have zero chemistry together. Lady Gaga is not even that bad an actor, she does fine, they just don't work. And that's a huge problem when their relationship is a huge part of your movie. And it sucks because you can tell people are really trying their damnedest with the material they were given. Like, there's this really good scene in the courtroom with Gary Puddles from the first movie, and he kills it. It shows that we could have had a pretty good movie showing the fallout of Joker's actions. With better writing and focus, we could have had something that was pretty good. Unfortunately, instead, we were given a pretty massive disappointment. Thank you for watching Layer 1. The next layer has some real doozies on it, and I can't wait to tell you about them. And of course, if you want to share your worst movies you've ever seen, let me know, I love hearing about this stuff. Join me next time when I descend into more duds. Until then, have a great day. Bye.